Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service and jbiztechvalley.com. We have a very, very special guest with us, Philip Morris, CEO of Proctors and the Rep. Philip, welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm delighted to be here.
And you have no connection with the cigarette company.
I have no connection,
Okay.
never did. Actually, there's a funny story. Years ago, when I was in Western New York, as I now have learned you've had some history, there was for 1 year buses in downtown Buffalo that had big, huge signs with a picture of a 55-year-old man saying, "Philip Morris says smoking kills." And I guess it was a bunch of anti-smoking people who organized the people around the country in big cities who had the name Philip Morris because the company couldn't sue them. It was their name. And so individuals would have their faces on the
Right.
sides of buses
Well,
saying,
McDonald's is
Philip
doing
Morris
that now
kills.
with their promotion. They're saying, "I'm Ronald McDonald, I'm Ronald McDonald, I'm Ronald McDonald," and they're promoting the name
Different, right,
to
right.
show that Ronald McDonald is all over the
it's
country.
real, it's real.
There you go. But Philip Morris was local enough, 60 miles away from downtown Buffalo. I mean, you were in Jamestown,
Yep.
New York at the time, the home of Lucy.
Lucy
Lucille
and Roger
Ball.
Tory Peterson and
That's right.
Robert Jackson.
And in case no one knows, Roger Tory Peterson was in like an aviary.
Ornithologist and
Ornithologist.
and an illustrator, and
Right.
started the series of bird books
Right.
that really sort of changed bird watching.
Yes.
Because the field guide of books became a pattern standard
And
of a pattern of doing
and there's a
natural
whole
books.
there's a whole exhibit dedicated to the Roger Tory Peterson field there.
There's
It's, I forgot what they call
materials
it.
and a study program
Yeah.
and other stuff. And then Robert Jackson, in my last couple of years in Jamestown, we opened a Robert Jackson Center for Justice. And Robert Jackson, do you know who he is? Was the last Supreme Court justice to read the law and was appointed by Roosevelt
Yeah.
and was picked by Truman to be the chief American prosecutor at the Nuremberg
Once you say that,
trials.
you know, I know. Once you said that.
Well, Robert Jackson's
it's
one of those common names, like
Right, but he was
Yeah,
an
no.
amazing,
No, I
amazing
didn't
man.
know, yeah.
He kept the Allies together in order for there to be trials,
Yeah,
because the Russians would have
Once you
done
said
what
his
has
name,
happened
I know
before.
it's
So to think that
incredible.
Just kill
Jamestown
them
had
all.
such a big
And all those three people graduated within the same year of
Really?
high school. Kind of an amazing little
something in the water.
moment.
Something in the water.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We have our Philip Morris. So
Okay.
tell us what your great accomplishment, and I mean that for real, that you've been doing in Proctors, and really Schenectady was always known as like going
for-
downhill.
No, well, vaudeville is what Proctors was originally known for. Everyone came through
Yeah, but
the
that's a long
circuit.
time ago.
That was in the 1920s, 30s.
That's what I'm saying.
And, you
I'm
know,
not that old to remember that over here.
George Burns, Jack Benny. I mean,
Yeah.
Proctors was huge.
The place.
Right? I mean.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was
And-
one of the great vaudeville stops.
Yeah.
And then it became a great movie theater as Proctor's, Mr. Proctor's, Frederick Proctor expanded his small empire, which included a theater in Troy and went all the way down the Hudson to New York City. I mean, he had I think he had 28
Right.
movie theaters at one point, something like that.
Well, if you go to the lobby of Proctors in Schenectady, you can read all about his life,
Yeah,
which I have.
yeah. And the changes in downtown Schenectady have been pretty remarkable. I mean, I think our role in it primarily has been recapturing hope and optimism.
Well, you also made an announcement recently that you have some energy efficiency going on, or there was
Well, part of
something
what we
that
did a dozen years ago was we imagined what our neighborhood needed to be in order for us to be successful. Because finally, in that link of the chain kind of metaphor,
Yeah.
well, you're only as good as the weakest
weakest
link.
link, right.
And our neighborhood had died twice in 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You really
Yeah.
revitalized it. That's what I'm saying.
So we decided to look at what could we do to help future developers of the properties next to us be successful. And energy costs are a big deal. So we built a central heating and chilling plant that now heats and cools about 1.2 million, about 7 buildings, 1.2 million square feet of property.
Uh-huh.
And by doing that, our users save money, and we reduced our carbon footprint by about 500 tons of carbon a year.
Really? That's
Which
a
is
lot.
hard to believe.
Yeah.
500
Yeah, I know.
tons in one little neighborhood. Makes you.
And there's revenue that goes to Proctors because of this?
Right, and there's
From the
revenue
other
that goes to
businesses,
Proctors, exactly. And it reduces our costs.
Well, I
because
have to
of that
tell
revenue.
you, what the revitalization of what you did with that Proctors complex and how you got corporate sponsorship to help with expanding that has just been a phenomenal experience, because I've been up here 35 years. I grew up in Brooklyn. And I knew Proctors when I was here in the late 70s, and I've seen it all the way through, and I really didn't like going downtown Schenectady in the 80s and early 90s, but all of a sudden now I can't wait to go again. It's like I want to go. It's like,
downtown's fun. And
incredible.
soon we have a Mexican radio opening, which is
A restaurant.
spectacular restaurant. It'll be a little bit of a destination itself, and Johnny's is doing great, and Aperitiva took a gamble, and Villa took a gamble.
Bombers.
The Bombers. I mean, the community. What's interesting about it, going back to what I started to say about bringing hope back, local people making decisions to invest back in the downtown. Now, local doesn't mean Schenectady. I mean, some people are from Albany, some are from Troy. But a sense that, wow, this might work. My investments might work here. And it's been proven true so far, and I hope for a long time.
So when you first got here, how many years ago is it now?
12.
12 years ago. You must have looked at the place and said, I got a lot of work ahead of me.
Well,
I mean,
I drove in for my first interview, and I came up from Jamestown. I came up Route 88, and I got off at the Rotterdam exit and drove in and made a mistake and stuck on Route 7 because there were no signs to stay on Broadway and go downtown, for those of you who know those directions out there. And I stopped at a Stewart's, of course, a Stewart's. And I said, gee, where's downtown? And the woman at the desk said, oh, you don't want to go there. And I said, oh, well,
I sort of have to.
I'm going to Proctors. Oh, well, that's all right. Here's how you get to Proctors. So even then, Proctors had a
Special name.
little special
Yeah.
place, an island in the
But
middle of.
again, you went to
you don't wanna
Proctors
go
and then you
there.
got out as soon as possible. You parked your car as close to Proctors.
And I went to the board interview, and I went to the board members and said, what happened? I never saw downtown so bad. And I'm a downtown watcher. I've spent my life working in that intersection between arts, culture, and community. And downtowns and the diversity of community need to come together, and that's where I think they do come together. And I've watched that all my life since I was a kid in New Haven. New Haven's sort of the inventor of every good and bad downtown renewal program in the country. And so I've watched this forever, and I couldn't get over how deplorable it was. When my wife came up during my second interview, she went, oh no, not another dying town.
Yeah.
But it's been a remarkable tribute to the community that's really stood up and said, we're going to fix this, and committed to it, invented Metroplex, an incredible invention.
How many mayors did you go through in 12 years? Was it 3, 4?
3,
You had Jasinski.
right?
You were after Ducey.
I was after Ducey,
Right.
so Jasinski and Mayor Stratton and McCarthy.
And McCarthy. Now, you also have a former mayor, either on your board or in your employ, Karen Johnson.
That's correct. She's on our employ.
That
She's
goes way
part-time
back.
at this point, but she was mayor a long time ago, and she's working in our development department and
Right.
helping with our planned giving.
Right.
And
So-
we also have another mayor who's on our board, Kathy Sheehan.
Okay, well, yeah, but isn't that honorary?
No.
Like Jerry Jennings was on your board?
No.
No, he wasn't?
Kathy's been on the board for a long time, 7, 8 years,
Oh, even with before, okay.
even before she was mayor.
Okay,
So
but I'm sorry, does it help to have someone of Karen Johnson's connections and expertise when you talk about business development? Is she the brains behind a lot of what's been going on? Because she's got those connections from when she was mayor, and she was mayor for 8 years, I believe.
Karen knows the subtleties
Yeah.
of lots of things.
Right, yeah.
So I think she would laugh if she watches this program because I'm going to replicate what I will do to her sometimes. Because she's there 3 days a week. And this happens once a month or so. It doesn't happen every day by any means. But once a month or so, I will look at Karen and I'll say, I need you for 5 minutes. And we'll walk in the other room and lock the door. And I'll go, okay, this is what's going on. Here's what I think is going on. Am I right? Did I miss it? What do you think? And she'll be very straight and tell me what she knows or who I should call. Or
Right.
So she's terrific.
Someone has to know the ins and outs. I was just going to ask, like getting into the meat of it. I mean, what is Proctors? Give me some of the shows. I mean, tell our audience the things have you accomplished there, not just the Aura, which is of course great, but like what's doing there in Proctors.
Well, in general, at this
general.
point, the theater, the complex, which is 3 theaters, meeting rooms, conference space, and a banquet hall, key hall. Last year we did 1,738 events.
It's like 5 a day. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
which ranges from movies to Broadway to conferences for 3 days, all kinds of stuff. We were open 358 days. We're really open every day. In the summer, we'll close on Sundays, and we'll close on Memorial Day and Labor Day, and that's about it. I mean, we really don't close very often. And unlike most places like us, which open for performances, we're open 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. every day, even if we have no shows. And we never don't have shows. But we have a coffee shop and a restaurant, and the arcade, which runs from the old Smith Street up to State Street, has really been a street in essence. It's been a pedestrian street for 90 years since it was built in 1926. And we thought about this a lot. We could have said, all right, we'll put the box office and the admission at those doors. But then we would be closed all day. And that didn't make sense. The building was defining itself to us. And so we went, all right, let's expand what that arcade's about. And so when the county sold us for $1 the abandoned Carl Company, which is where the new GE Theater is, and the Apostrophe, and the banquet, and the conferencing facilities on the second floor. We just expanded it into the arcade. So that's all the part that's open all the time. And really only the doors into the main stage are only open when there's a performance or an event.
And then you got the Parker Inn, which is connected.
Right, well, we don't control the Parker, but we do
Right.
control a small piece of land that is how they have a second egress.
That's right.
Yeah, so they are tied into that space too,
Right,
yes.
and that's been, I presume, working out well for both the Parker Inn and for yourself?
Yeah, that's worked out fine. I mean, there's been some changes in ownership and stuff, but it's all
No, but I
worked
mean,
out
generally,
fine.
when people come and they want to stay in downtown, they stay at the Parker Inn, and then,
It's a lovely small hotel,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
lovely.
and what's now you have Open Stage Media, the Eighth Step, which used to be Eighth Step Coffee House.
Yeah, but within
You have Classic Theater Guild, Morco, which is the Mop and Bucket Company.
Mopco, yep.
Don't ask me to say that again. And then the Capitol Rep in Albany, you're renaming the Rep, and there's a new branding going on with that.
Yeah, within Proctors, what we did was sort of the attitude within the organization is just say yes. We kind of don't say no first. We say yes first, and then try to unwrap what that means. And so we've become a bunch of things. So we're public access for Schenectady County.
That's right.
And that's Open Stage Media. And we create a fair amount of product that gets distributed in Albany and in Troy and in Saratoga. We have a great relationship with Channel Albany, and we hope to grow that over time, and that's a good thing.
Well, we hope so too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing.
Personally,
so
yeah.
we would broadcast
'Cause that's where
these shows, whatever. We like that.
Good.
We have a lovely small studio and a bigger studio. We do a lot of training. We have an extensive education program most people don't know about. We're in Albany High School and Schenectady High School full-time with media instructors, working with English instructors to try to work with kids who have the least likelihood of success. And by using media as an approach to learning English, kids will read things that they might not otherwise read because they want to create the video product that might be attached to it as a project. So it's a hands-on, tactile way of learning, which makes a big difference to some learners. Some learners learn by book, some don't, but they're still brilliant, but they need another way to be attached to the material.
Well, it's a whole other topic, which is why Common Core doesn't work, but that's a whole other topic. But I wanted to, what's going on in the basement of Proctors down there? Because I heard there might be a studio or some live performances, or
Yeah,
the you also have the market.
The lower level is called the Education Center. When we have a Sunday market, which is October through May, the last Sunday market was this past Sunday, then it goes outdoors and then comes back inside. When we have a Sunday market, it's all throughout what's called Robb Alley, the first floor of what was the Carl Company years ago, and the lower level. And then the lower level on Friday nights, every Friday night is Mop and Bucket
Company.
comedy, improv comedy.
Right.
And then it's used as a studio. It's our bigger studio. So Schenectady Today and a few other shows that we shoot for our public access happen there that want more than this. And then we have a small studio upstairs for this kind of thing, and they're differently configured, like the studio. You walk in, you just do it in the small one, and the big one is a bigger studio. It needs to be set up, needs to have a set, needs to have other things. But we have about 8 shows that are shot in the lower level, and we have, I think, 22 hours of programming that we're shooting at the smaller upstairs.
That's a lot of
facility.
programming going on.
Yeah, it's a lot of programming.
And how is your son? I met him at Proctors. What does he do? Does he work there? Or does
No. My son is.
Well, maybe he was at the time, but
Actually, you're right. He did for a very short period of time help out the maintenance department when we were in trouble
that's
there.
what it was. Okay.
But he is now the executive director of an emerging not-for-profit called the Chefs Consortium, which is a mixture of 10 or 12 chefs from throughout the region who are concerned about farm-to-table, promoting and advocating
So
farm-to-table.
he's local.
Yep, he's local. He's
He
decided to
stayed
make
because
Schenectady.
he's thinking of moving
Yeah,
out.
yeah. He went to Europe for a year. He
Yeah.
came back. He said, "I'd like to make this home."
Okay.
And my daughter, one of my 2 daughters, did the same thing. And the other daughter, who knows? She's getting
Okay.
her doctorate. And, maybe some university around here will hire her, and I'll have all 3. That'll be great.
That's wonderful. So, and where do you personally live? Do you live in the
I lived
city?
in the Stockade for 10 years, and then my wife has always wanted a piece of land.
Yeah.
So it finally reached the place where I had to give in, and we moved just outside the city line.
In Dwaynesburg?
Nope, in Rotterdam.
Rotterdam.
A 1701 house, which so it's the. In fact, there's
Original,
a sign on the street
Yeah.
above us that says this was known as Westina. The Dutch called it wilderness. So my house is at the edge of the wilderness in 1701. I had a historic architect come look at the house while it was being inspected, just to help think about it. And he said, this home is the original green building.
Wow.
Because every floorboard, every wall, every brick came from this property. When it falls down, it's going right back where it came from. It was very cool.
So let me ask you a question that's public information, and but I always ask this question. What is the salary for you at Proctors?
It's just $200,000.
Okay, well worth it for you based on what you've done.
Well, I hope so. I hope the value's there.
Okay.
I hope so.
I think so, personally, so I don't fault for that, but I just...
Well, we've grown from $2.5 million a year to $22 million a year. And
Well, that
the
certainly pays
range
your
of what
salary.
we do is substantial, as I said.
Yes.
From
Yeah.
energy to markets and green markets and public access television and other
So
No,
stuff.
really, you're the center of Schenectady, really. I mean, right now, to revitalizing a community.
Which is interesting because an arts venue is not usually the center of a community.
Should be GE or something.
It usually is something, when...
Big factory.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's that
And that's
just say
wonderful.
yes attitude. It's
Yeah.
about bringing the diversity of the community into one place.
Being welcoming.
You know, and welcoming. And
So did you ever ask Karen Johnson, like, why she couldn't do this when she was mayor?
you know, times change. I mean, at the time, the building needed to be saved.
Yeah.
And when she was mayor, she actually took the gamble to put a roof on it and give a bunch of volunteers the chance to do something in the building. So
Okay.
I give her a lot of credit.
Okay.
I mean, there was a man who was there for some time who brought it to a place where it had a large financial debt, very large debt at the time, Dennis Madden. And, you know, I credit Dennis Madden, and I thank him for the debt he got us into then, because he did it because he tried to create an environment where that was the performance center of the capital region. He set the stage,
So to speak.
for what we ended up doing 4 or 5 years after he left.
Yeah.
Because why else would the second city of the capital region have this terrific performance facility? Series of accidents, and you know, it's an odd.
So what does your wife
circumstance.
say now, 12 years later?
She will
Does
never leave.
She,
She will never leave.
so she's not saying, oh no, another.
Her roots, to use her garden analogy,
Yeah.
are in the ground and deep.
Well, that's great.
So if I leave Proctors,
She's staying.
it's without her. I'll be a commuter.
And it's interesting, just even on a bigger scale, how, you know, again, that we've been around for a number of years, even though I say I'm always 29 years old. But, you know, the cities were, that's why I started off to show that, you know, I've seen the cities down in the dumps, or New York City going bankrupt in the 70s. And now I'm looking at Albany and Schenectady, and, oh, they're all dumps, you know. And now, you know, New York City is revitalized. I mean, even in the worst neighborhoods are now special. And, you know, and I know Albany's trying, we have many people on the show from Albany, you know, trying to, you know, convention center, or trying to make it a, you know, that's where the place to be. But you're on the cutting edge. That's what I'm saying. This is something countrywide that really taking these, you know, impoverished cities and making them, hey, that's the young people. That's where I want to be, you know.
Absolutely. And the way I describe the capital region, I've described it many times, is it's a suburb surrounded by cities rather than a city surrounded by suburbs. And when you think about that, it's so true, because you go outside those 4 cities and you can walk to a farm. You can walk to a farm from downtown Albany going south to Bethlehem.
You're right.
You can walk to a farm after East Lansing. I mean, you know, most of suburbia, if not all of it, is in the middle. The airport's in the middle. The malls are in the middle. The traditional suburban housing is in the middle. And it may be our salvation, because we don't have the capacity yet to do significant regional land planning, but our natural 4 cities that used to compete with each other,
Albany,
structure
Schenectady, Troy, Clifton
and
Park?
no,
or
Saratoga.
Okay.
has contained all the rest of it. So if you drew a circle where the most people were, it would be a circle that would be
Oh, I see, with suburbs and-
Loudonville,
Clifton Park.
Bonanza, Clifton Park, over to
Niskayuna.
Niskayuna, Rexford.
Right.
I mean, that would be where the people are, and those people don't care what city they go to.
I got you.
And I actually love how different our cities are. I really love it, which is why when Cap Rep came to us, now we call it the Rep, and said, you know, can we talk about partnering, because we're having a hard time doing this alone. We looked at it and went, this is not going to be easy. It's not going to be cheap. But the relationships that could be created by crossing that suburban center and saying, yeah, we're committed to Schenectady. We're also committed to Albany. We're also committed to Troy. We're also committed to Saratoga. These cities have to make it. And it seemed right to say, yeah, we're going to be part of helping downtown Albany and the cultural scene in the capital region by supporting Cap Rep. Just was the right decision to make.
And how many years has it been since you've...
3.
3 years.
And actually, amazingly enough, while it's been hard and we have not met all of our hopes, we've eliminated over $700,000 of debt that they had. It's all gone.
Incredible.
So
Wow.
it's been
So how
great.
much more debt do they have that you got to get?
112,000 that actually has a pledge against it from the state, if we could just get the state to say, here's the money. So we could be with no debt.
Wow.
But it's a
Congratulations.
little
Mazel tov.
easier for
Thank you.
yourself to go from practice. Let's say maybe you have a good act. You can go to the rep, well, do one act in Albany and one act in Schenectady.
Well,
Does it
the
work
rep is
that
very
way or
different
not?
because the rep is producing professional theater. So when the rep does something, it's from scratch. It's made from scratch professional theater. When Proctors does something, it's bought in a box, brought in a truck. It's really different. We're a presenter, and the cap rep, the rep is a producer. And actually, there's an interesting thing about this capital region. We're a suburb surrounded by cities, because Albany is the only city that really produces any art. Really, now
Well,
I'm
the
being a
Little
little
Spa
strong.
Theater in Saratoga.
Yeah, that's somewhat professional, somewhat not, but the professional theater company is the rep. It's the only equity LORT theater, League of Resident Theater.
And then at
The ASO.
Washington Park.
It's not all
Playhouse?
professional.
No,
I mean,
okay.
it's good. That's not what
Yeah.
I'm saying, but it's not the full-time equity, all equity performer professional theater. But the ASO is a full-time professional orchestra, and the only dance company that's really professional is Ellen Sinopoli, which is based at the Egg.
So Maud Baum isn't.
There's
Eba,
sometimes
Eba,
there's some professionals, mostly not.
Okay.
And that's a distinction in the capital region we haven't fully embraced.
Right.
That where there are the professional, and not to say union is better than non-union, but union, equity union, and musicians union professionals are, definitely over time
and
a
then
cut above.
Russell Sage used to be a huge
And that
draw.
used to, right, and he
The
used
New
to
York
have,
State Theater Institute.
which was all professional and
Yeah,
equity, but
right.
that's gone. So it's kind of amazing because Albany's a cultural scene, are kind of the producers. Schenectady's cultural scene is definitely the presenters. Troy's cultural scene is more around the makers, the visual artists. And,
Well, that Troy Music Hall is incredible.
and the music hall is great, they're a presenter. But what happens so much in Troy is the sale of antiques and stuff that's made. There's the new Maker Center in Troy. There's the visual arts program that's at the Art Center of the Capital Region. I mean, it's not black and white, but largely that's the maker's place. And then Saratoga is a mixed bag of visual arts and the major attractions that SPAC can bring in the summer. But the rest of the year, there's not a lot of performance in Saratoga.
But the Little Spa Theater, I keep going back to that because I go up there
They do a great job.
in the colder weather, and it's just it's really nice. And then there's other theater which around here, I don't mean in Pittsfield, but the
Once you go to
barn,
the Berkshires have a ton of professional theater.
right. But then you have the barn, out in Averill Park, West Sand Lake. You got a theater there. I mean, there's other.
And those are mostly amateur theater.
And then in Hudson,
That's professional. She does a great job.
Right, in Hudson, what is the Chatham? What is it?
No. Stageworks, Hudson.
Okay, Stageworks. Okay.
Yep, that's all professional.
And then you got something in Chatham, where there's a theater, Mac-Hayden Theater, which those seats are so small I can't go there. I mean, I tried, but I'm not that. They're just too small for me. I fall asleep because I have no way to move. I mean, I had a little bit of a problem with Proctors and that, but I've adapted.
Maybe you ought to lose a little weight there.
It
Mark,
wasn't
over
me. It wasn't. Look, I said if Mike Eck can fit into the seat.
So
I'm sorry. I'm
going to
just
tell you a trick.
bantering.
I'm going to tell you a trick,
Yes.
and it's a
All right,
trick
let's
that
hear
all
it.
your listeners are going to hear.
All right.
Okay.
The seats at Proctor's range from 16 and a half inches wide to 21 and a half inches wide. They're like that because they're laid out for sight lines, so people aren't looking in the back of someone's head. We know where the wide ones are.
All right. You'll help out Mark over
So,
here, Philip.
If
over
you
here.
say, I'd like a wider
Wide
seat,
seat.
they have a chart for that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Thank you for that tip. But otherwise, I get an
All right,
aisle
we'll leave
seat. Otherwise, I need an aisle seat to stretch my legs onto the aisle. But anyway,
Yeah.
I have a wonderful time at Proctor's. I know I saw. who is it? There was a performer, a singer that came on. He passed away a few months later. Jewish, what's his name? I think of him and Barbara Streisand a lot, but...
I can't think of who that is.
Oh, okay. He had died of cancer, but he was on stage at Proctors just a few months before he passed away. And then I remember when George Burns came when he was like 98.
Well, I mean, and clearly the Jewish connection to entertainment and the arts is unbelievable. I mean, the producers are mostly Jewish. I mean, this is long tradition. I mean, and it's a beautiful, wonderful thing.
And I was trying to work on a program similar to this with Zeb for Schenectady Access TV and another gentleman, and it just somehow just petered out. I don't know. It just seems like it took a long time to get the graphics and to get things going. So we just kind of. I came out here with Rabbi Simon instead,
right.
and maybe I'll give Zeb the shows, and he could put it on. You know.
Yeah, we could do it that way, or we could do it the other way.
Okay.
Whatever. We'll try to make it work.
We'll talk.
We'll talk. We'll make it work. We'll make it work.
We're out of time, but it's really been very enjoyable, and you've been doing an incredible job, and we just wish you always with a blessing should continue with success, even more success, and of course everything with good health. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Shalom,
coming.
Rabbi. Thank you, Mark.